Today is the 40th birthday of one of the most iconic slasher movies of all time, which I'll be talking about today. This is the best and worst of Friday the 13th, the final chapter. So, of course, this is the fourth movie in the franchise, which came out a little less than 2 years after the third movie. And we'll get into the best and worst of the final chapter here in just a minute. But first, I want to run down like some fun facts about the movie and kind of how the movie came about and things like that. So this one, the idea behind the final chapter was kind of, they didn't want to make a movie that was campy or silly. They wanted it to be one of the more serious movies in the franchise, a scarier version of the franchise. And I think that definitely comes across, in my opinion, in the movie for sure. So there was a bigger pushback kind of than ever in 1984 when this movie came out towards slashers, just a big pushback. So Paramount definitely kind of just wanted to end the whole Jason thing. They even told Joseph Zito, the director of this movie, like, hey, this is going to be the last one. We're putting Jason to the side. No more. So we're going to kill him off like once and for good. Okay. We're going to do it, right? Joseph Zito, right? It's going to happen, you know? So yeah, but 1984, big year for horror for sure. Just a big year for a lot of movies in general. But 1984, we had Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Silent Night, Deadly Night, The Terminator. Yes, I'd kind of consider the original Terminator a horror movie, slasher movie. And then, of course, A Nightmare on Elm Street. But, and like part 3, the final chapter kicks off right after part 3's events. So we just follow Jason in the barn, on the ground. Boom. I love that, which is very similar to part 3, which picks up right after part 2. I love that. This also, a little fun fact about this movie too, is in the final chapter, we actually get Jason's mom's name, Pamela, for the first time, which is something I didn't really know until recently. When the kids drive by the headstone and it shows Pamela Voorhees, nobody knew what Mrs. Voorhees' name was until that time. So little fun fact there, Pamela Voorhees' name gets discovered in this one. So then this movie was made for about the same budget as part 3, but thank God no 3D stuff ruining a lot of the other parts of the movie. But yeah, same as part 3, kind of the same budget, which are by far the biggest in the franchise thus far. So about a $2.2 million budget. And then this movie ended up making $33 million. So once again, very successful. Probably a big chunk of that budget went towards creating the house across the street from the Jarvis house for the other kids. They made that all from scratch. So that probably was a big chunk of that. But yeah, this movie was directed by Joseph Zito, who was coming off of The Prowler, another, cult classic slasher movie for sure from 1981. Tom Savini did the effects in that movie. Some great kills in that movie, definitely. But Tom Savini actually wasn't the first choice to do the effects in this movie, surprisingly. I'm glad Tom Savini ended up doing the effects. But but they eventually, after the other guy dropped out, they were like, we got to bring the guy back who created the monster to finish off the monster. And Savini was stoked to be back too, for sure. Little fun fact too, though, is Tom Savini actually didn't create the final look of the adult Jason in this movie. They had already kind of modeled the way that Jason was going to look in this movie off of Tom Savini's original look for Jason in the original. And Savini thought it looked great. And he was like, all right, let's just continue with that. So he actually didn't model that, which is kind of something I didn't always know either. Because I always thought like Savini just did everything in this movie, but he didn't do everything. So this movie, of course, has Corey Feldman in it as Tommy Jarvis. His name, Tommy Jarvis, kind of a homage to Tom Savini we were just talking about too. Just, Tom, just to say kind of a little bit of a thank you there towards everything Tom Savini's done for this franchise. But so Corey Feldman was almost 13 years old when they filmed this movie, so still very young. And this was definitely early Feldman. This was before Corey Feldman really blew up. He only had 3 movies before this, not really all the big ones that you're used to kind of under his name. But after this, obviously, he just exploded and just had his huge run in the 80s after this with movies like Gremlins, The Goonies, Stand By Me, movies like that. So he just really, The Lost Boys, of course, but just really blew up after that. So to me, before we get into the best and worst of, to me, I want to talk about a couple more things, but The greatness in this movie, obviously the kills are amazing in this movie, but the greatness in this movie is it has a great blend of good characters, great gore by Tom Savini, a great Jason, one of the best Jasons in the franchise, just a great blend of all of those things. I love the grittiness of the first 1, 2, and 4. 3 is a little bit silly, but I love the grittiness of the franchise in those movies, and part 4 is no different. It's like a gritty, darker, scarier, more grounded type of a Friday the 13th movie. I love the sillier movies. Jason X, don't get me wrong. Love me some Jason X from time to time, but I also just love like the grittier early 80s, mid 80s Friday the 13th movies too. So part of the greatness of this movie, I think, and why it's so like well received and so popular in the franchise is it's such a great blend of those things that I mentioned. But yep, Ted White, like I said, widely considered one of the best Jasons in the franchise. We'll talk about Ted more in just a little bit. Rest in peace, Ted. But let's get into it. Let's get into the best and worst of the final chapter. So first of all, what's aged the best? For me, all these years later, what has aged the best? I think for me, it's Jason's death at the end. Jason looks great. I mean, even watching it today on up to this point, in this era on Blu-ray with a high resolution, it still looks damn good. With the whole animatronic look, his head still moving a little bit as the machete goes down, and the whole scene of Jason getting killed. It's intense. You got Corey Feldman doing a great job with 101-degree fever while he's filming that scene, just like brutally going after, Jason, and Trish fighting back. That's just great. But Jason's death specifically has aged really damn well for me. I also like something that's aged pretty well that I thought about recently in this movie was I like the fact that they kind of made it drawn out before Jason comes back to life. The audience, I mean, I didn't watch this movie in the theater in 1984, but I can imagine, and the first time I know when I watched this movie, I think I can remember kind of just thinking, okay, I know Jason's going to come back, but there's that tension of when's it going to happen? And then when he's in the morgue and you see the breath, you're like, oh shit, it's happening soon. I can't wait. I love that. I think that's aged pretty well too. But what's aged the worst in this movie? Probably Axel's necrophilia. Hasn't aged too well, right, guys? No, but best location in the movie for me, it's an easy one. It's got to be the Jarvis house for me. I also like the opening scene at the hospital. You guys know if you've watched my channel now for a minute, I love hospitals in my horror movies. Always will, always have. But the Jarvis house for me is the best location in the movie. Worst location in the movie for me, really anywhere around the Jarvis house that's not the lake or the house. Anything else just feels kind of just like wherever they're shooting it, it just feels kind of generic, kind of feels like you're in Los Angeles, which they were in Southern California for filming this movie, but it feels very much like that. It just feels a little bit generic. So anywhere besides those two locations are my least favorite locations in the movie. Best character in the final chapter. Like I said, I think a lot of love for this movie comes from how much fun people have with the characters. There's some silly characters, there's some fun characters, there's some funny characters. Obviously you have Chris McGlover doing, his dance and just everything like that. But, for me, maybe it's Gordon Jarvis, the family golden retriever. Gordon, he's a good little puppy in this one. But Trish is a solid final girl as well. But for me, though, without a doubt, in the final chapter, it's got to be Jason. It's got to be Jason. Corey Feldman's great, too. There's a lot of great characters in this movie, but it's got to be Jason. I just think, first of all, I think Ted White does such a great job portraying Jason in this movie. Kind of an interesting portrayal of Jason in a lot of ways, because Ted White was not a spring chicken. He was 58 when he filmed this movie, and especially when you watch interviews of Ted, about like things happening on set and how the production was and how filming this was, he's pretty damn funny. Ted is a funny guy. You can tell he was just like this gristled, rest in peace, Ted, this gristled, old school, no nonsense kind of a guy, the elder statesman on the set in a way. He kind of reminds me of my grandpa in some ways when I watch interviews of him. Just a no nonsense kind of guy. My grandpa was a career military guy. Yeah, Ted just seemed like, I wish I could have met him. Seemed like a cool dude. Just a get shit done kind of a guy. Something kind of interesting too is Ted was actually at the time, because he had been a stuntman in Hollywood for years, for decades, in all sorts of iconic movies. And he was actually kind of ashamed to be in Friday the 13th, and was ashamed even after the movie came out, even after the success, and actually was offered the role to play Jason in part 5 and part 6, but turned it down. Turned it down. And years later had, kind of regretted that and wished he would have just embraced it more and things. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the fans and stuff. But yeah, best character in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, has got to be Jason for me. It's got to be. So worst character. For me, it's Paul. Paul's an annoying, just a piece of shit boyfriend, I just don't like Paul. No, not Paul. Worst character in the movie for me is Paul. Best line in the final chapter. For me, it's I don't know. I always laugh when Crispin Glover, his character Jimmy says, "God, I'm horny." I don't know what it is. It's just, you can just see the poor dude's blue balls in his eyes. You know what I mean? It's just. And then he has to go and thirst over Lorraine in the next year in 1985 and Back to the Future 2. Man, Crispin Glover, poor guy. But yeah, Jimmy, I don't know what it is about that line. I just think that line's hilarious. But I also laugh later towards the end of the movie when Rob is like, "He's killing me! He's killing me!" When Jason's killing him, you're like, yeah, Rob, we can see that, buddy. Thanks for narrating it for us, though. That always makes me laugh, too. But little fun fact, the dead fuck line, famous line, probably the most famous line from the movie, the dead fuck line, was actually improvised by Ted's actor in the movie. So, yeah, Lawrence Moneson, the actor. So, yeah, that was improvised, kind of interesting. Worst line in the movie. For me, it's in the opening at the hospital. It's when Nurse Morgan is talking to Axel, and they're having their whole interaction in the morgue area, whatever you want to call it, the ice box, right? And she's like, "I don't believe you, Axel." And then they both say it together. They both say, "Then shut my mouth." And it's like, what am I even watching here? It's one of the moments in the movie that kind of throws me off and maybe should end up on like what's aged the worst for me as well. But it's kind of a duo line from both of them in a way, but it's more so has to do with Nurse Morgan, because it's like, is this girl bipolar or something? She hates this guy Axel, clearly. And then all of a sudden just like flips. And it's like, "Okay, let's have sex." What is good? Like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? So that line's not that great. Plus, like, how believable is the cold room for trying to get a girl into bed? Come on. Like, there's no chance that a girl would meet you in a cold room to have sex. Like, who wants to have sex and freeze their ass off? You know what I mean? That's just not going to happen. Plus, on top of that, you got a dead serial killer right next to you. But maybe Nurse Morgan's into that kind of thing. I know there's some girls that, are really into serial killers. That kind of gets them going. So maybe she's one of those. Who knows? But all right. Best kill in the final chapter. Woo! And obviously this is a tough one, but I'm going to be kind of a little bit of a pansy here and talk about a few. I mean, it's the final chapter. Come on, guys. But I will give you my favorite still, but I do want to talk about a few because I love the kills in this movie. So the obvious answer here is probably when Tommy kills Jason at the end, right? How Jason's head slides down the machete, quivers a little bit, the whole animatronics thing. Love that whole scene. I do. They almost actually, the other idea, because tons of people in the production were trying to come up with ideas on, okay, we're going to kill Jason. How are we going to do it? Here's my idea. Producers were coming to him. Tom Savini was coming up with ideas. Zito was coming up with ideas, all kinds of ideas. The other idea they almost thought about having, because Tommy Jarvis is so like innovative and smart as a kid, they wanted to show his creativity and stuff. He was going to create like this, he had this thing, this electrical like unit that he had, and he was going to, I don't know exactly even what it is, but it was like a thing, and that's probably part of the reason they didn't use it. He was going to somehow hook that into Jason's head and then have Jason's head explode. Would have been kind of cool, but they wanted to go with more of a grounded final kill for Jason with the machete. Jason had been killing people with the machete, so they were like, we're going to take him out with a machete. I think that will work. Obviously a great choice, but something kind of interesting too is a lot of the kills in this movie, which is normal, were cut down, of course. But one of the reasons a lot of the kills were cut down to being this much quicker in this movie in particular was because they wanted to draw out and have the Jason kill a little bit more drawn out to make it more effective at the end. Because if you notice, like, I know for me, the first time I ever watched this movie, I was like, oh, damn, like they actually showed everything. I was so used to like a machete going in and then we cut, or, whatever. But at the end with Jason, they really draw it out, and I think it's pretty damn effective. So they had to cut down some of the other kills in the movie to make the last kill more effective, and I think it was a good choice for sure. But my favorite kill in the final chapter, which will probably always be my favorite kill, because it's the kill I always think about when I think about this movie. It just always pops into my head whenever I think about this movie, and it's Axel's death. I don't know what it is, but it's Axel's death. I just love that kill. The horny bastard is just there. He spills his coffee and then gets the saw in the neck, and then Jason pops his head around. It looks a little silly. It's funny. It's brutal. I don't know what it is. Plus, Axel's kind of a piece of shit. So like anytime a guy like that gets murdered in a brutal way, and plus it's kind of kicking off the movie, I don't know. It's just a great kill, and one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite kills in the franchise and my favorite kill in this movie is because I just don't ever forget it. It's just a very memorable kill for me. But I also love Doug's death, though. Doug's death is great. I know a lot of people, that's their favorite in this movie. But yeah, Doug's death is great. When he gets his head crunched in the shower, that is an incredible kill. It's crunchy. It's juicy. It's just a damn good kill. And he ends up like with his head over the broken glass in the shower. That's just a damn good kill. You also get the great close up of Jason's mask. You get to see the part 4 Jason mask, like really good right there. Love that whole scene too. But just the atmosphere in general for the kills in this movie are great. It's like a lot of the kills go down. There's rain happening, thunder. You've got the houses, the great location for the houses for a lot of the kills. It's just a great setting for the kills in this movie, which I think adds to them for sure. So, worst kill in the final chapter for me. What's unique about a Friday movie? What's unique about this movie in the franchise for a Friday movie is this movie actually has a parent running around in the movie, Mrs. Jarvis, running around in the movie. Kind of watching over everyone, sort of in a way, but not really. But yeah, I know for a lot of people, the worst kill is Mrs. Jarvis because it just cuts away with her screaming. I get that. There was a deleted scene. It's not going to be my least favorite kill, though. That's the obvious answer. But really quick, there was a deleted scene actually of Mrs. Jarvis. Trish finds her later in the tub in the house and like brutally, like she's dead. She's looking all nasty and stuff, but they just didn't want to dwell too much on that kill. But for me, my worst kill in this movie is actually Ted's death. And the reason why it's Ted's death is because I feel like Ted's death was underwhelming in the fact that it was just a missed opportunity, because Ted is one of those people you wanted to see. I would have really enjoyed seeing killed in a unique, creative, just gory ass way. And to see him go out, you know, just with like the knife in the back of the head, blood streaming down the like projector, it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. Like a very basic, like, oh, maybe we couldn't have too much gore in this movie, so we had to make his death toned down. I think if they would have replaced his death with somebody else's and made Ted's death more theatrical, just bigger, bloodier, better, I think that would have been awesome, because everybody wants to see like the cocky kind of like little asshole get it, you know? That would have been fun. But little fun fact about Ted's death though is he was actually stoned while filming that scene. Yeah, he wanted to like make it as real as possible, his portrayal of the character in that moment. So he went over to his trailer, smoked a doobie, and came back. And he said like it was damn near impossible to listen to the direction of the director during that scene, because he said he gets really paranoid when he gets stoned. So he was just like, he just couldn't concentrate at all, which is kind of funny. So when you go back and watch the movie, just remember that Ted was actually stoned during that scene, which is kind of funny. So, but that's my, worst kill for me is Ted. So best moment in the final chapter. For me, it's the moment Trish and Tommy start to fight back against Jason. Just the whole cat and mouse stuff. This is just when it really feels like Jason's an animal hunting his prey at that moment in the movie. The setting's great with the rain and the thunder. It's nighttime. And it's essentially like all the kind of silly, maybe dumb characters are dead. It's just the best characters versus the best character going at each other. You know what I mean? And it all ends with a great ending, some great gore. It's tense. The setting's great. Everything that goes down at the Jarvis house looks great. It's great. I just love it. That's my best moment in the movie for sure. I just love that. Even Corey Feldman has said years later that was the most terrifying thing he has ever filmed to this day in his entire career, was especially the moment when Jason pops out of the window. He said that scared the shit out of him for days and days and days. And to this day, is the scariest thing he's ever filmed. So, but that's my favorite moment. Love that moment from when Trish and Tommy start fighting back against Jason. Love it. For me, the worst moment in the movie is just the whole party scene. It is painfully awkward, the entire party scene. Yeah, Chris McGlover's dance is great. It's funny. Yeah, there's some funny little moments there, but it's kind of boring. I think there's better party scenes in the franchise. And like I said, it's kind of painfully awkward. And I get it. They're supposed to be young, awkward teens or whatever. But yeah, worst moment of the movie for me is got to be that. It's got to be the party scene. But anyways, everybody, that is the best and worst of Friday the 13th, the final chapter. And like I said, it's its 40th anniversary today. Pretty damn cool. Go put on the final chapter to celebrate. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments down below what some of your favorite moments in the final chapter are, your favorite kills, favorite character, whatever you want to put down there. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys on some of your favorite things in Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Like I said, one of the most iconic slasher movies, one of the kings of slasher movies ever. I personally really, really enjoy this movie. Is it my favorite movie in the franchise? Well, we'll just have to see when I have a full Friday ranking. I don't want to spoil it, but I do enjoy this movie a lot. Like I said, it's a great blend of characters, kills, the setting, a lot of different things. There are some things I don't necessarily love about the setting. I think there's other movies. I think the setting is fun and great, but there's other movies I think in the franchise that have a better setting. I do really, really like the Jason and how Ted White portrays Jason in this movie. Is it my favorite? We'll see. But anyways, a great movie, a great slasher movie, one of the best slashers probably ever made, and just iconic movie, no doubt. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. If you want more Friday the 13th content from me, let me know. But anyways, I'll talk to you in the next one.